friends, welcome to Metal King Studio. So, as you can imagine, preparing for a Kickstarter can be really stressful, and so I wanted to take some time to just wind down, and one of my favorite ways to do that is to paint miniatures. Over the last 20 years, I've used a lot of different techniques to paint models, and so I wanted to share some of those techniques with you guys because I realized that that buying models that are unpainted is kind of a barrier for some people. And really, I see it as a big part of the value that I get out of buying a model kit is the chance to paint it and customize it and make it my own. And as an artist making Relicblade, I also see it as a really cool opportunity to collaborate with you. I sculpt it, I create the world most of the way, it's 90% done when it gets to you, and then you get to put these finishing touches on it, and so I really, really like that conceptually. So I've been painting really fast lately. I don't have a ton of time to paint models, and so when I do get a chance to, I really try to force it into a small amount of time. So I realize a lot of people are probably interested in learning how to paint models fast, and so I'm excited to show you some of those techniques. So I'm using as few paints as possible, but as you can see, you still need a bit of stuff to get the modeling done. There are a couple of different phases to putting together your model, and the first is assembly. So over here I have the figure, some assembly tools, and then we can worry about this stuff later. So I've got some sprue cutters. I got those for $5 on Amazon, $1 for super glue, $1 for a razor blade, an old toothbrush. So you can see, I'm not, even though I do this professionally, I don't really need really high-end stuff. They sell proprietary, branded stuff, but you don't really need it. So what I'm going to go through first is assembly. Then otherwise, we've got coffee to fuel my imagination. We've got a thing of sand that I got from the park for free. Don't pay for sand if you don't have to. I've got water, a paper towel. I've got paintbrushes. This, I think, cost me $2 at Michael's. I know this cost me exactly $1 at Target. It's a makeup brush, and you'll be happy to see how we use that later. This is a Winsor & Newton Series 7 Sable paintbrush. This is a $25 or $30 paintbrush. You don't need to buy a really expensive paintbrush. This is the tool that I have and love, and so I'm going to use that even though it's not really a beginner tool. We've got paints. I use Privateer Press P3 paints a lot. I really like their introductory sets that they offer. It's a little box that has 6 paints in it for a little discount, and they all work together really well. So if you haven't painted before, I really recommend grabbing one of those little boxes. And then I use the Games Workshop washes. I'm sure there are other paints out there that work really well, but that's what I use. This is for holding the model, a little sticky tack, and that way I don't have to get my fingers on the model. I've got spray paint, glue for gluing the sand on, and that's pretty much it. So why don't we go into assembly? Alright, so for this little introduction tutorial thing, I chose to do the Dark Wanderer miniature. So for the new Bone and Darkness Kickstarter campaign, this is the flagship model, so I think he'll be really fun to paint. When you get your models, they are cast in a white metal. And, we do our best to try and make sure they come out as perfect as possible. But, there's always a possibility that you're going to need to do some cleanup. And that's sort of the part of the hobby, of course, is building the model and making it right. So things to look for are things like mold lines. And, depending on the cast, we do our best to make sure there are no mold lines, of course. it looks like this guy's pretty clean, like super clean. So I'm really happy about that. I don't do the casting for these models, and so it's sort of out of my hands, but obviously the foundry I work with, they take pride in their work and they do really a good job, so I'm really happy with how this turned out. The other thing that is not obvious to the eye is that miniatures, when they are cast, have to come out of the mold, and so there's usually some residue of mold release on there, and mold release helps the metal slip out of the mold without getting stuck and damaging the mold or damaging the figure. Although in the case of a metal model, it's more likely to ruin the mold than the figure. So one thing that we want to do first is actually clean the model, so that's what the toothbrush is for. So I'm going to do it here. Normally I would do this at a sink or something, but for this it's easier to do here. So just some soap on the toothbrush, and we just like really actually scrub the figure. The reason this is good to do is because we don't want the mold to get stuck to the figure, but we do want our paint to get stuck to the figure. And so if you don't do this, it's possible that the mold release in some places will make it so your paint will flake off of the figure. And I've skipped this step a bunch of times because I'm lazy, and then really regretted it later. So I think this is a good step to do. And it doesn't take very long. So the next thing we need to do is wait for this stuff to dry. So using the clippers, I'm able to more exactly clip off the parts that I want. And so the Dark Wanderer and Dark Watcher model kit actually includes an option for a club or a bow. And I painted one in this color scheme with a bow already, so I'm going to make his club version. So what you want to do is clip the little parts out, and then make sure that you really carefully remove any bits of the sprue that are still in place. Now I can see when I look really closely here there's a little bit of a mold line there, so all you have to do is take your hobby knife and just like scrape along the edge, and that'll flatten out the ridge from the mold line. Nice. Alright, so that's a good little clean piece. And then the other arm is this stone dagger. And so clip this out. And on this part, I think that there's a little bit of the sprue that blocks where it's supposed to connect to the model, so I'm kind of clipping out around there. There's like a little circular ball joint there. And yeah, sweet. So if you clean it off, clean off the excess metal, it should fit in pretty good. We can test fit it. Yep, perfect. Alright, then we've got a base here. This is a slotted base, and the tab slots right in. Oh, check it out. There's like a little bit of flash there. This is a little piece of metal. Got to clean that off on his feet. Alright. And now we get to do the super glue. Super glue, you want to be really careful how you squeeze these tubes. It's possible for it to all just like burst out. It's also possible for it to dry out. So I just used a little needle tool to poke a hole in there, so I should be able to get some glue out now. Yeah. Alright, so I put the glue along the tab and at the bottom of his feet. Then stick it in to the slot on the base. And usually super glue takes about 10 seconds to dry. One thing you can do if you're like me and really lazy is use a little water to accelerate the process. That's just like a chemical reaction with the super glue. It makes it glue in place. Okay, now we've got his arms. I'm gonna glue this dab of glue there, a little bit of accelerant in the form of water, and I'll stick his arm in place. Just like that. So the model is almost done. We've assembled him, but now to do a little bit of sand on his base. And so one thing that I like to do with my figures is add a little touch of wood glue. I use wood glue because it's like a little bit hardier than average like school glue, white glue, but I use that. I spread it around on the base, get a nice layer. And this sort of helps fill gaps between, like visual gaps between the metal tab and the slot on the base, because it's not like a perfect fit. In fact, sometimes you got to trim the tab or do different things to make it fit right. But with a little bit of glue on there, and then some sand that's not, you want to try and find sand that's not too fine and not too thick, because you kind of want it to look like whatever ground you're trying to represent. And the ground should be to scale of the figure. So if it's really big rocks, then it looks like they're walking through big rocks instead of like walking through open ground. And so as you can see, I just dipped it in there. I use my finger to wipe off the glue and sand that's along the edge. I like to have a nice clean edge there. And then I also like to take a tool and try to clean off any sand that has gotten onto the feet as well, because like dirt may stick to the feet in this little miniature world, but not quite to the extent that their feet would be like buried in the sand. All right. There we go, guys. Look at that. This model is now pretty much ready for the spray paint. So let's do that. Alright, we're outside. So you don't want to use spray paint inside, obviously. And so I'm out here on my back patio. There's some construction going on that maybe you can hear. But I use the spray enamel. It is a flat black primer. You know, you can use all kinds of different spray paint. I usually use cheap spray paint. Some people swear by really expensive spray paint, but I can tell you this cost me like $2.99, and so that's more in an artist's budget. You want to make sure you shake it pretty good. You don't want it to clog up or do weird stuff, because we're working with such fine detail, you don't want to clog it up with that. And you want to spray not too far away, or it'll dry in the air and get all fuzzy on the model. And you don't want to spray too close, or it'll clog the detail. You know, I can give you all kinds of advice, but the thing is, like, you've got to just sort of practice, and eventually you'll get it right. Now, the other thing I can do after it dries is lay the model on its side and try and get the underbelly of it to get any of the parts from beneath that I missed.